Okay, not quite sure what's going on with the render settings. Apparently it's something to do with the position of it being off for some reason. I've tried a few different things, but it hasn't worked so far, so I'm just going to have to leave that for now. However, I can show you a sort of it's kind of like a cheat um, in which to do this. So if you remember, I mentioned that you need your save frames, and you need to sort of line up your 3D model, create a camera. That's actually worked perfectly, leave it as it is. And what you can actually do is, sorry, if you go back to your camera view, so if you render this, you'll get essentially what will be your grass texture. I'm just going to go to desktop and create a grass texture folder. Let's call this grass clump 1. And this is where we're going to keep all our textures for grass clump 1. So we're going to call this diffuse 1 and just save that as a bitmap. And then what we're going to do is we're going to completely remove the background, and we're going to make these 100% white. So we need specular, full, ambient, full, yeah. We can even make them 100% self-illuminating. There we go, perfect. And what we're basically doing with this, we're creating an opacity map. So one thing that 3ds Max does and what game engines do is it takes the black the black textures or the black colours and removes it from the original texture, and it leaves this really crisp edge that'll be the leaf blades. So if you save that, and we'll call it opacity 1. Opacity 1 bitmap. Now, what we can do is just hide this, draw out a plane on the front view. So you should have something like this. And we're going to test our new grass texture. Go grass texture, clump 1. So add in your diffuse, go back, and if you hit this little checker pattern, you should be able to see it. What you will notice is that it's a bit blurry. What you can do to change that is, first of all, select the checker pattern, click and drag, and you can actually select this blue option here, and it shows the realistic material in the viewport, as you should be able to tell. It does help. It takes a bit of PC performance, but if you've got a decent PC, you can do it. The other thing you can do is, if you hit this little plus in your viewport, configure the viewport and go to display performance. I've already done it, but you can actually set your texture maps in your viewport to be higher than I think it's 512 and 1024, so you can actually set these to be a lot higher, so 2048, 2048, and then 2048. Hit apply, click OK, and you should be able to see a really clear image on your screen. Now, the next thing we want to do is make all this background disappear. And we're going to use the opacity map. So I think you can actually put it in this way. If you just select the little box next to opacity, hit bitmap, and select that. Yeah, you can. And what you should be able to do then is, if you render it, sorry, that's maybe add a bit of, so you, oh yeah. So when you make grass, it's a good idea to create a two-sided material, and that goes for game engines as well. If you're going to create grass, make sure it's two-sided, because obviously, if you don't make it two-sided, it'll just disappear when you come at it from a different angle. So that's one thing you can do. Right, now that we've created our little section of grass, we need to make it a bit easier to sort of see as a 3D object rather than just a flat plane, because if you can see from an angle, it doesn't really look all that realistic, doesn't really look impressive. So what we can do, just draw out a plane. This is going to be our ground. Imagine that you've created this amazing environment and it's filled with dirt and rocks and trees and whatever else, but you need clumps of grass just to sort of fill it in a little bit. Now, at the moment, I mean, it doesn't look too bad. I actually quite like the way the grass clump has come out. It's a bit cartoony. What you can do, first of all, is if you just start creating little copies, but make them instances, because we're going to edit these just a little bit. And again, you can start to shrink down your planes, maybe draw it out. Maybe rather than rotating on the spot so it's 360, maybe, just drag them down a little bit. And create. You can start to see that it creates these nice 3D clumps that you can sort of scale up and down and add a bit more. Let's try it like that. Okay. So obviously it does look really sort of stylized. It doesn't really look realistic at all. But if you imagine that you've got a texture on here, in fact, alright, maybe need to mess around with the colours and things a little bit more when I'm rendering in the first instance, but yeah. So we've created all of these as an instance. Now the reason we've done that is because grass often bends down to with gravity and rainfall and things like that. They don't stand straight up like this very often. So when you've got one of these selected, you need to create an edit poly, and you should be able to see that the edit poly is actually a bit more bold than it usually would be, and that's because it's applying itself to all the other planes that are instanced. With this selected, don't do that. If you select edge faces, I've messed up. So if you just, it's alright, it's not bad. So if you just select these edges that are sort of in between, if I hide everything else, and just loop it, so you select across, hold control and click remove, and then do the same for these edges that you don't want here, and click remove, and then unhide everything. You can see there's a lot less geometry. I'm gonna get rid of those for now. So and I'm just going to work with my planes. So yeah, there we go. So if I hit 7 and then just configure my viewport to show me the triangle count, if I select all of my planes here, deselect the camera, so you can see my clump of grass is actually only 12 triangles, which is actually really small, 6 polygons. As opposed to the 139,000 that the other grass clump was. It's definitely a lot better for games, for environment rendering, things like that. And what you can do is, once you've got a clump, you can actually just group it together, hold shift, drag it out, create copies, do as many as you like, really. And just start dragging them out. And what you should end up with eventually are these sort of world-filling objects. So render that, so you can start to see how that works. Yeah. Okay, now back to the whole edit poly. Sorry, I kind of went off on a bit of a tangent. So if you ungroup one of these, what should happen when you start editing is that it should copy to every single other one that we've copied, as it's sort of a hierarchy. So if you select 2 of the edges, and we'll connect them just to see, yeah, so you should be able to see that right then every single model just changed. And then if you grab this top edge, or actually that edge, and just drag it backwards, you can see it's only affecting this clump here, the rest that are grouped don't count. Um, Tell you what, let's delete the other groups then. Pointless. So I've connected these two edges up, and I can start moving around. And first thing you'll notice is it looks a bit strange on every single piece, but that's fine. That's not the end of the world. What you can actually do is just connect these up again and do the same. So you've got just a few edges going across. And what you want to do once you've done that is you can actually apply the bend modifier. I quite like the bend modifier because it does quite a lot of things I like. For 3ds Max, change the direction, so change the angle a bit more. Right. Okay, so if we unhide all this, I'm gonna just delete those. What you should see is the grass is now starting to bend a bit more. You might need to play around with it, might need to rotate these individual leaf blades, move them around a bit, make them look a bit more natural. But the overall general idea is that when you sort of stood, if you were a game character, you'd probably be stood about this far. You render it, you can see it's a clump of grass. It's not something that most people should be looking into quite a lot, but it's something that should look good enough that when you walk past it, you believe it's a piece of grass. And that's basically your introduction to foliage. I'm going to stop it there because this video has taken quite a while. But I'm going to pick up with flowers, flower petals, and then I'm going to show you how to create different clumps with grass and flowers mixed together to create a sort of a full foliage set.